I've read hundreds of studies and experienced it myself, and I can safely say now, A, this is why you binge, and 2, this is how to stop. Let's get into it. Alright, let's get straight into this is why you binge and how to actually stop it. It's not a lack of willpower, it's definitely your body trying to protect you and your brain as well. So let's break down the real reasons and the science around it. I read so many studies. So, does this look familiar? First you restrict, calorie deficit, going on a diet, then you have cravings that you try to fight, but you end up binging. Then you experience guilt and shame because why did I do that to myself? I need to make up for it, therefore you restrict and you just stay in that same cycle. I know it, I've lived it. It's just because your brain thinks that you are starving, going through famine, and triggers survival mode. So, the first trigger is the restriction. Whether it's calorie cutting, whether it's skipping meals, fasting, low carb dieting, your brain is still going to perceive it as famine, and even if you're eating something, your body knows that it's not enough and therefore is going to try to override and will override, and that's what leads to binging. And yeah, there are actually studies that I should have added to this one that shows that even the thought of restriction, especially if you have a history of binges, will trigger the same pattern. Even if you don't restrict, the thought of restricting and the food rules and all of that will trigger the same things. So that's also good to know. Biology 101. There's a lot of studies, we have a few graphs, and yeah. So what happens when you diet for a long time? When you've been dieting for a long time, ghrelin, which is the hunger hormone, skyrockets, okay? So it goes into overdrive so it's basically your body telling you, oh, we need to eat, so you stay alive, right? Leptin, which is the fullness hormones, actually drops, so it's harder for you to feel like you've eaten enough food. And that's why the longer and that's true even if you do a healthy calorie restriction and lose a little bit of weight. Like even now in my cup, it is normal for me. I can assume, I should have taken a test, that would have been interesting, that my ghrelin levels are higher now than it was 6 weeks ago, just because I have been in a calorie deficit. So even a healthy calorie deficit will lead to that anyways. And you can see here that, the calorie restriction, that is what CR means, will create more ghrelin. Like in this research, they've seen, more ghrelin in the stomach and less leptin. So, yeah, I don't want to get into the time restriction because I just wanted this graph because it explains it well. Thyroid function slows, so your metabolism drops to conserve energy as well, because that's the analogy I always use with my clients. If every month you have 2,000 euros, dollars, whatever, earn, you spend it, right? If the next month you only get 1,200 euros, you're not going to spend 2,000. So it's normal that if you don't get that, and it's exactly the same with your body, if you don't get the food, your body's going to be like, well, I don't want to struggle, so I'm going to, lower my metabolism. Dopamine sensitivity also increases, we'll get into that in a second, and your brain will become sort of hyperactive when it comes to food cues, especially the one that are called okay, I can't say that, you can read it, I'm sorry. And yeah, your metabolism slows to conserve energy. But it will crave the food that will trigger dopamine. We'll see that in a second. And as you can see here, so pre-weight loss and the control group experienced weight loss, but they had normal weight, and the actual group were obese people, I don't know if it was women or men, that went through, the same thing. So you can see for both, they actually both, if you just go through calorie restriction, regardless of your weight, you are going to have less leptin and higher ghrelin. So your body just doesn't trust that the food is coming, and that's why it does that, to trigger you to get the food, just in case. Then the binge hits. So you give it, right? Because your brain is screaming for calories and your body is just it's just gonna go on overdrive. Like, I'm not, binges, you know what it feels like. You get out of control, eat a lot of food really, really quickly. So here is what happens, and I'm not talking about all the consequences because there's so many, 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 many consequences to binging in terms of long-term health, but also, just short-term consequences as well. But here is what actually matters and why you're stuck in the cycle. First, you've got a rapid glucose spike. Temporary relief, oh my god, calories. Dopamine surge because it feels soothing. It's very much trance-like. You know what it feels. It's just out of body and it's not you. It's very much dissociation. And then the blood sugar will crash. Okay? Because you've got, especially if you've binged on, like, as I assume you would, high carbs, high sugar, highly processed food, it does, like, glucose goes and then goes down. That's how it usually works. That's how it works. And you can see that the next day you will still have high blood glucose levels. Therefore, that sort of keeps you in the loop, basically. And you've got guilt, fatigue, inflammation, water retention's kicking. And worst of all, your brain will register what happened as, ooh, that worked. I liked it. Even if it felt uncomfortable, it soothed, it just hit the spot and it did the job. So next time you are starting to, you're basically starting a pattern in the pattern in your brain when it's like calorie restriction, binging works. The trigger to binge works. And you see that the blood glucose are not as high without binging, and therefore way more manageable, so you don't experience the same, cravings, because high blood glucose and a lot of ups and downs will lead to that. And let's keep on going with the biological aftermath of a binge. First, insulin stays high, so that leads to more hunger. Surely you've experienced binging and still were hungry like a couple hours later. This is because of the sugar spikes and the insulin doing its thing. It will lead to more hunger. Leptin resistance so remember, this is the fullness hormone, may develop over time. Therefore, it's going to feel less easy to feel full. Dopamine cycle continues because, as I've just said, more cravings for the same, you will need more food to satisfy the same craving and to hit the spot. So this is a study that I found interesting. Obese individuals, when compared with lean individuals, experience less activation, and so that's like the same if you do, I assume gain weight from binges, but you experience less activations of reward from the actual food consumption, like from the same food. So you will need more to feel satisfied. You also have water retention from glycogen. So that's the carbs converted into energy and getting into your body, into the muscle, right? And that will lead to a temporary weight gain. So you panic, so you restrict again. Because after a binge, you've got all that food in your stomach, which leads to water retention. You've got the actual food weight. So when you get on the scale, it can be a couple kilos, if not more, on the scale. And it's not actually fat, but it will still trigger the, oh my god, I need to restrict. Therefore, we get back to the restrict cycle, and it's just the loop, right? And this is how the binge restrict cycle traps you. Also, blood sugar, as I said, will actually, instability, will actually fuel the fire. Because the next day, what do? You skip breakfast or you undereat because, oh my god, I need to make up for it, right? No. That will lead to blood sugar dipping by the evening, craving for fast carbs, and you've got low mood, low energy, and you will have that urgency around food because you stay stuck, as we've just talked about, in that restrict cycle. So you will get back into, oh my god, I need to eat, and you binge. So you're not addicted to sugar, you're just underfueled and depleted. Now let's talk a little bit about the emotions and the need for distraction that will lead to binges. Because shame, stress, loneliness, fatigue trigger your nervous system, and that's also on top of the calorie restriction that the calorie restriction can actually lead to that anyways, will trigger the binge. You've got two main things, the calorie restriction and then the emotions. Those are the two big things that lead to binge. So I found this interesting study about hedonic eating, which is when you eat just because food tastes good more than I need, like physiological need of I need energy. So basically, your brain will seek food as comfort, escape, distraction, and control. So when you eat because of emotions, just to feel good, right? Not because you're hungry, you activate certain brain circuits, and namely, okay, give me a second because those are tough to say. The ventral tegmental area, so that releases dopamine, as we've seen. Therefore, it is going to be like highly linked with like feeling good post eating, and that will reinforce the ooh, let's keep on doing that in the brain. The nucleus accumbens, that will reinforce the behavior. Again, that brings pleasure. The amygdala, that processes emotion. I don't know why it's here. The hypothalamus, that will regulate, hunger and fullness, but it sort of gets overridden by the other stuff because it's going to be like, it feels good to eat. Then you've got the prefrontal cortex that control like impulses and decision making. And the perilochus ceruleus, mentioned in that specific study, that is involved in arousal and stress response. And so this is going to be key, especially the latter, because it may signal or amplify stress, right? That leads to emotionally driven, like driving eating patterns. So what does that mean? Basically, pleasure driven eating involves dopamine neurons, and in the part of the brain that reinforces the enjoyment pattern of the food. So it just encourages you to keep on eating even when you don't need the food. Basically, it feels good to eat, let's keep on eating. That is a very long science, thing, and what happens in the brain to explain that. It feels good to eat, even if I'm not hungry, triggers the thing in the brain, it soothes me, it makes me feel better, I forget about the problems that I have, let's keep on going. Even if you're full, right? So this is why you can't willpower your way out, because it is not a question of willpower. It is a biological thing. It is like very physiological. It's stuff that happens even like without you actually doing it, right? So your brain just overrides, your survival brain overrides your logical brain. And we all know that, willpower is a limited source. So, at first, at the beginning of the day, you've got a lot of it. And then the more you make decisions and try to control the impulses and, all of that, you will end up with a very, very low water bottle. Therefore, it is very more likely that you will binge at the end of the day, just because this is how it happens. You have less willpower at the end of the day, and this is when you binge. So the only way out is to work with your biology, with the science of what's going on in your brain and in your body, not against it. So how to do it? What breaks the cycle? First of all, eating enough. When you look at, the binge restrict cycle, where you can actually, you can, work your way through everything and do something about everything, but we first start with the restrict part. Do not restrict. The next day, what do we do? What did I do after my last binge? Because it's been, oh my god, why I have not said that yet. It's been 50 days. I don't know if you can see. It's been 50 days, and I haven't been able to say that in 6 years. It's been 50 days. The next day, after my last binge, instead of restricting and trying to count my calories and be like, let's keep on being in a deficit, no. I decided I'm gonna have a high protein, high carbs, high fat breakfast. It needs to keep me full. So I had like a bowl of oats with frozen fruits, mangoes, and protein powder in there, and peanut butter. I had that because I needed to feel safe and make my body feel safe, and this all helped with the sugar, like the blood sugar levels as well, because fat and protein help with that. So it just helps stabilize everything, regulate everything. Have a high protein, just have a healthy breakfast. Have breakfast. Eat something. You can't get into the restrict mode again. Don't track for the next few days and, few weeks. Stop tracking. Just, okay, let me feel safe around food. Let my body realize this is not, famine mode. We're fine. We're not trying to survive here. It's okay. And then that will lower the instances of binging. Prioritizing sleep and blood sugar balance. Again, we all know, because I keep talking about it, that sleep is so important. But sleep, what does it do? It will lower your ghrelin hormone, therefore you're less hungry, and increase your leptin, therefore you feel fuller easier. And it will also help with blood sugar balance. Please sleep enough. You know what? After the slides, I need to add a couple things so you see what's going on. So that's the restrict part. You've got the regulation part in terms of sleep, even more nervous regulation, nervous system regulation. Take walks, breath work, connection, talk to a friend, because you have that emotional problem. You first have, as I said, the restrict part. Stop restricting. I'm going to make a very in-depth training that is going to be way longer than this one about, how to, a step-by-step, how I broke the cycle. But from what I can tell you now, what I did is just acknowledge the days after that you are going to need more food, because binging, as I've just showed you, will make you hungrier. So for a hot second, eat a bit more. It's fine. I would rather gain, and that's exactly what I told myself, I would rather gain a few more pounds or even kilos overeating for the next few weeks, because my body needs more food and we need to regulate, than binging for the rest of my life. So I decided I'm going to take one for the team. I'm going to, gain some weight, maybe overeat, and I made sure I had 3 meals and 2 snacks throughout the day. And then I was like, okay, now I don't feel as hungry. I can feel that I'm feeling better. So what do I do? And then I moved on to let's track, because I know weight loss and I know how that works, and tracking calories has been the best thing for me, because it allows me to make sure I eat enough to not trigger and binge, but not too much that I don't see results. That's why I track calories, because it works both ways, right? And I was like, let's just rewire the pattern from tracking to immediate binge. So I tracked for a few, however long. I don't actually want to give you a timeline, because that's going to make you feel like you need to have that same timeline, and I don't want that. So I decided I'm going to track just whatever I want to eat, just to see where I'm at. And I saw where I was at for a few time frame, like insert your time frame. Then I decided I'm going to calculate my maintenance based on my current weight and my current activity level and all of that. Calculated it, and I'm going to eat at maintenance. I'm going to track, and I'm going to, rewire the pattern in my brain. Tracking equals safe. It's fine. I can track without triggering a binge. I'm tracking at maintenance. So I eased myself back into tracking, and then I decided, right, seems easy enough, I'm fine, let me do a small calorie deficit, just small 10%, just to, see how I deal with hunger and see how I deal with tracking in the deficit. Went really well. Then I decided, I have a deadline, so let me see if I can, push myself a little. Now that I haven't binged in a while, it seems that I could do it, and I have been able to do it. So yeah, you will have the in-depth training very soon. I don't know, because I keep changing my schedule based on the ideas that I have, so that's also that. But you will have an in-depth training on how to break the cycle and how to get back to a healthy weight, because this is a full thing. It's stop binge eating and then losing weight, because you want to feel confident, you want to feel good about yourself. So this is coming too, but I wanted to make this quick video to explain to you the science behind why you binge, so you can start taking the actions on your own. So yeah, find ways to cope with your emotions, because any minor inconvenience for me would trigger a binge. It was not just the restriction, as I said, you have those two things weighing in the balance, right, of like what will lead to a binge. So I had to figure out what would make me feel better and what will help me, because the emotions come back after the binge and the kilos are like high on the scale, so that's not going to work for me. You have to find ways to cope in healthier ways. And what do? I call my brother. I go for runs when I'm angry, and just when I need to, or when I feel overwhelmed, because it calms my brain. And the repetition that, and like sort of the rhythmic movement that comes from running or even walking actually calms your nervous system. So that's why I really recommend it. It's like summer's coming, so you definitely want to look into that and lean a little bit onto that. I need to look into the science, but I know I've seen it. That, anyways, walks and taking fresh air and going outside will like definitely help. And I painted my nails when I felt an urge. Again, that's why we'll get into the training, what to do when you feel the urge, right? But I paint my nails when I feel the urge and I wait for 10 minutes. I set a timer. I've told you already that actually waiting for 10 minutes will teach your body and your brain will sort of release dopamine because you'll feel good about what you're doing, and it will teach you how to get better at waiting like an urge out. And the peak of an urge usually is 3 to 7 minutes anyways, so if you manage to wait that time, and I found that most often I'm fine and I don't need to do anything about it. And I haven't done like if you follow me on Instagram, I'm very open about when I feel an urge and what I do during that time. I haven't binged, but the point is wait 10 minutes. After that, you'll feel better. Emotional validation, yeah, as I said, find a way to regulate what's going on and actually help you, because the emotion is going to come back. So you want to make sure the problem is going to come back after, and you want to make sure that you find a way to actually problem solve. So journaling, coaching, community, stuff like that. You are not weak, you're just underfed, overwhelmed, and misunderstood in the sense of you actually don't understand what's going on in your body and why you stay stuck in the cycle. You don't binge because something is wrong with you. You binge because something hasn't been supported yet. So you gotta change that. And yeah, again, if you need help, I can help you out. But that was you binge. That was it for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, like, subscribe, comment, share, all that good stuff. If you need help, book a free call down below. I am always more than happy to talk with you and help you out and coach you out of binges and out of being overweight, I guess, because I've lived it and it sucks, and let's get out of it. So yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.